1989. I'm Jackie Jungerhoff, and I am interviewing Bernice Vogelaar on cheerleading. Okay, what do you remember about cheerleading?
Well, I remember that it was busy. You know, you were constantly busy, but with the pep sessions and practice. I remember that it was good physical activity. I remember that you had certain expectations to present yourself in the correct manner, that your clothes were clean, your hair was clean. You know, you were a representative of the school. So, gee, I could go on and on about what I remember. I remember the competition as far as just trying to become a cheerleader amongst ourselves. We didn't really go to competition outside of our school at that time. So that's something that I've watched over the years with interest, that now you compete against other schools, and I think that's real good, but we didn't have that.
Okay. Now, what do you remember about how cheerleaders were treated like in school?
Well, I would say that cheerleaders were always probably some of the most popular girls. And I think it's because they were always in front of the student body, and so they were easily recognized, and the name was readily there. If, you know, if they were voting for student council or class officer or queen or something, what is the first name that comes to mind? It was usually one of the cheerleaders. So I don't know if it was a cause and effect type thing, but yeah, they were probably some of the most popular girls.
Could you explain what your role was in school and what were you expected to do?
As far as the cheerleader?
Yeah.
Well, we were expected to be enthusiastic and to raise the level of spirit within the school group in order to give the enthusiasm our guys needed to go out and win games. And I don't think much has changed since then.
Okay, explain everything you remember about tryouts, everything.
Well, I can remember trying out as a 7th grade cheerleader. Okay, so that's quite a few years ago. And I can honestly say that not much had changed between the time that tryouts as a 7th grader up to the time I was a senior. It was usually the same procedure. You had to be able to present yourself with 2 cheers. At the beginning, I think in the 7th grade, I think they had teachers that selected the cheerleaders. But throughout my high school years, it was the varsity club members that selected. So in some cases, you know, it goes back to the popularity contest. I think there were some girls that were elected on because they were popular with the guys rather than they were really talented as a cheerleader.
Okay. What do you remember about what it was like going out and cheering for the first time?
That's a hard question. I think it's hard because I've always been a ham, you know, and I think you have to be a bit of a ham to be a cheerleader. I can't really say that I remember the first time because, you know, I had a sister that was a cheerleader, and I had always watched it as a kid. So from the time that I saw it and the time that I actually participated, I don't think I remember the difference. Can't help you out much there. I do remember the first time we went to state tournaments and how that was. I think I was a sophomore or a junior, and we went all the way to state championship. And when we got in there, the auditorium was so differently constructed. You know, we had a big wall in front of us, and our crowd was way far away. So it was hard to get the enthusiasm going. We felt separated.
Yeah. Okay. Explain to me why you joined cheerleading and how important was it to you?
I joined cheerleading because, good question. I think it was an achievement. It was something to be strived for. It was somehow, if you were a cheerleader, you had somehow achieved something. What was the second part of that question?
How important was cheerleading to you?
Cheerleading was very important to me. I think had I not ever passed it, had I not ever been selected, it would have been devastating for me.
Yep. Okay. What do you remember about what it was like learning all the cheers and chants?
Very difficult. You know, we spent a lot of hours in practice, nowhere near, I think, what you girls do today. But, you know, you were always expected to practice 2 or 3 days a week for a couple of hours. And it was quite time-consuming. But I remember them to this day, some of them. You know, that's the crazy thing.
Oh, that's okay. Were the cheerleaders from like all grades, or are they just seniors? And if they're just seniors, explain why they're only seniors.
The cheerleaders were from all grades. The junior varsity cheerleaders were usually 9th and 10th graders. The varsity cheerleaders were usually 11th and 12th, although it was never designated as such. It was almost something understood. I suspect had there been a phenomenally good, cheerleader in the 9th and 10th grade, that she could have made varsity squad. So it's more of an assumed thing rather than a regular rule.
Did you ever go to a cheerleading camp? And then if so, tell me what you remember, everything you did at camp.
We never went to cheerleading camps. I don't believe they had them at that time. If they did, we were not made aware of them.
Describe what your uniforms were like, and was everybody's the same?
Well, as a junior varsity cheerleader, we had the pleated skirts, black, and a black sweater with orange letter C, and a big, what's those things that you yell through? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of them, across the C. And as a varsity cheerleader, it was white. We had kind of a cream-colored skirt, cream-colored sweaters with orange and black letter.
Okay, what rules do you remember you had to follow when you joined cheerleading?
No smoking, no drinking. You were expected to, if I remember right, I think we had almost the same rules that the athletes had. We had to have a certain grade point average. Just about the same rule.
What was your most embarrassing moment when you were cheering at a game?
Oh boy, I think there were quite a few. I would have to say that probably my most embarrassing moment when I was cheerleading, I have a false front tooth, and it was a temporary cap, and it came out in the middle of one of our cheers while we were out on the floor on a basketball court. And I naturally had to stop what I was doing in the middle of the cheer to go get my tooth. So the tooth caused me a lot of pain growing up, but that would probably be one of my most embarrassing.
What do you see different from cheerleading now and cheerleading then?
The cheers today are much more advanced, more professional, if I can use that word. I'm amazed at the athletic abilities that the girls have to have in building their pyramids or whatever you call them now.
Yeah.
I think they're more precision drill, which I'm intrigued with. We just were not that structured. And I think it's better today than it was then. Mm-hmm. Constantly is improving.
Yep. Okay, what were the duties of the captain and the co-captain of the squad?
The duties of the captain of the squad were to more or less police the rest of the girls as far as whether or not they were following the rule. I think that it was their responsibility to make sure that everybody knew the cheers, that the practices were held regularly, that we not only knew the cheers but the moves that went with them. And the co-captain, I don't really recall that she did much of anything except, be on standby should we need her.
Okay, looking back, explain what you liked most about cheerleading.
As I reflect on cheerleading, I think the thing I liked the best was the chance to be a leader. I think it paved the way for my ability to speak out and not to be too nervous in front of a crowd. Even though I still am, it still paved the way. I think we all suffer from that. And it just gave me a sense of belonging to a bigger and better thing, a sense of identity.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember most that you hated about cheerleading?
What did I hate the most about cheerleading? I think it was freezing at the football games. I think that's what I hated the most. That's what I'd have to say.
Explain what you feel cheerleading done to your life.
I guess I kind of covered that already. I think it gave me a sense of self-confidence for public speaking or going ahead and taking the risk to stand up for things that I think are important. It gave me a sense of confidence.
Mm-hmm. What kind of mounts did you do, and describe some mounts if you can?
What kind of what?
Mounts.
None.
You didn't do no mounts?
Mm-mm. No mounts.
People say cheerleading is not considered a sport, while others say it is. What do you think about cheerleading considered as a sport?
I think cheerleading is definitely a sport. It takes a lot of physical abilities. It takes teamwork. It takes exercise and structure. I definitely think it's a sport. Anybody that doesn't think it's a sport needs to reassess what happens, through the process.
Explain what your practices were like and how you felt about practices compared to games.
Repeat the question for me.
Explain what your practices were like and how you felt about practices compared to games.
Our practices were, I can't remember the time sequence. We usually held them right after school. And we would practice for at least an hour. We would go through the actual cheering part. Okay, I'll try to finish where I was at. I said the practices ran right after school for about an hour and a half. They were okay, but I felt that they were boring in comparison to the games where the crowd's enthusiasm and your enthusiasm kind of fed each other. It just got, you got more hyper and more hyper. So, yeah, I much preferred the games because you had a sense of, it was kind of boring without the games, put it that way.
What do you see different about the way cheerleaders acted then and the way they act now?
I don't see any difference. I think that from what I've observed at the games, the cheerleaders conduct themselves very well, and they're well-mannered, and they seem to be very intelligent, and we were too. How's that for pride? No, I don't see any difference.
Okay. What do you remember about the things you did at pep assemblies?
Well, we used to have crazy skits. When I reflect on them now, they really were crazy. Just anything to get the crowd enticed, the enthusiasm. Anything to get the adrenaline of the players up and at them. I can't really remember. We'd do some cheers, and I think it was just the gathering of everybody around and got the electricity going again.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one thing when we went from the old school to the new school. And I think for the first couple of years in the new school, it took a long time. Everybody said that what am I trying to say? That the enthusiasm, that's not the word, that the school spirit was dead in the new school, and I think it was. It took a couple of years to get used to the gym and the surroundings and to have that sense of camaraderie again. Mm-hmm. But after that, it did get better.
Mm-hmm. If you were asked to coach a cheerleading squad, what would your response be?
My response would be no, because I think that the girls are so advanced today that there's nothing I could show them. I think it takes a woman or a man, preferably a woman, that is currently active in the school system, one that's young and in shape. I'm not in shape. I think you have to be in shape. But I think it's important that, there is that kind of participation.
Mm-hmm. Were guys able to try out on your squad when you're in school?
We never discussed that, and I don't think they ever would have. I think they would have been laughed right out of the school, which is really a shame because, hey, look at your colleges. They got some marvelous men cheerleaders. And I think, again, that's some of the signs of the times. That are there any guys interested in No. And it's because they would be viewed as a sissy, but that's too bad. I think that will change as time goes on, don't you?
Yeah, I think it will, too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.